Hi everyone, ¿qué lo que mi gente? Today I'm going to give you 10 tips on everything you need to know to travel Mexico. Tip number 5, activities. Now, there's so many free activities that you can do in Mexico. Museums are free on Sundays, so that's a really good day, especially in Ciudad de Mexico, to just go to as many museums as you can. The Palacio Nacional, which is the main government building, that one is also free, like 9 to 5 on weekdays. If you go to, like, for example, El Zócalo, which is like basically a Times Square, there's like so many plazas, Plaza Garibaldi, like there's so many places that you can go, and there will be like a lot of cultural activities going on. Like you'll see mariachi bands, you'll see people dressed in indigenous garb and like performing, and you can tip them if you want. There are so many markets, there's so many things you can do for free in Mexico that you do not need a tour guide for at all. And talking about museums, if you go to Frida Kahlo's museum, I really doubt that one's free ever for tourists. Go to the website and get your tickets ahead of time. If you wait to buy your tickets there the morning of, you're gonna be waiting for hours. If it's a busy day, you might not be able to get in at all. It's not expensive. I think it was like $14 total. That's another thing. You might wanna pay with PayPal because sometimes that website has issues with credit cards. It apparently is very common for that to happen. So pay with PayPal. They're gonna give you a time slot for you to get there. I would say get there 10 minutes after that starting time, because that way you avoid lines, and you'll need about 2-3 hours in that museum because there's just so much to see. If you decide to go to Xochimilco, which is like something that I definitely recommend you do if you go to Ciudad de Mexico, which is like the boats on these artificial canals, you 100% do not need a tour guide. There's so many tours that I've seen, they're so overpriced, so expensive for no reason. You could do that by yourself. There's just a few things that you should know. Make sure that the address that you put is Embarcadero Nativitas or Nativitas. Make sure that's the one you go to. Make sure once you get in the car, you tell the driver again that's where you're going. You don't want to go to another Embarcadero. There's a scam that happens often when you go to Xochimilco. When people are going to that Embarcadero, or sometimes even like another one, a boy or a man will come like on a bike or a motorcycle, and they will try to tell your Uber that Embarcadero is closed, that terminal is closed. It's not true. They'll say, oh, it's a holiday, so it's closed, or whatever. They'll make something up and tell you that it's closed to follow them to another Embarcadero. They're only doing that because they want to charge you more. They're being paid by these other trajineros, which is like the boat drivers, to get people to their terminals. But the reason that I'm saying go to Embarcadero Nativitas is because it's harder for them to scam you there. There's a set price, and there are actual posters in a few places telling you the prices, the set prices. The price for a trajinera boat is 500 pesos per boat, per trajinera. It is not per person. If anyone tries to tell you that it's per person, they are trying to scam you. So make sure you go to that one. That one will tell you the official price, the official rules. But another thing is, if you take a trajinera, which is like a party boat, right? Like you can pay for a mariachi band to come over, you can play your music while you ride, you can eat food. There's a lot of vendors on their own boats selling you food, and that's really fun if you have a group. Like if you go with a group of friends, with family, definitely 100% do that. But if you don't have that much time, or you don't want to spend as much, or you go by yourself like I did, I thought it was kind of like pointless to get one. And also when I went, it was a very busy day and they were charging too much. It was like 3 hours minimum, and I was not gonna spend 1,500 pesos to sit in a party boat by myself. So there is another option. There is a colectivo. These colectivo trajineras are super cheap. They're 30 pesos per person. And they're not as big as the other ones. They don't have like a table in the middle or anything. You have to sit with a bunch of other people, but you get the same experience pretty much, especially if you're by yourself. Who cares? Like, you get to watch the other boats and see them doing their thing. It's a shorter ride. Like, you really don't need to be there 3 hours. Like, you get the picture after 30 minutes. You get the idea. Also, if you go on a weekend, it can be really, really crowded. So if that's not something, like, crowded to the point where there's traffic in the water. Sometimes there's like a standstill in the traffic. I do think the colectivo doesn't work on weekdays though, so. And when it comes to other activities, going back to tours, there are some tours that you should definitely do. You should just be discerning about which ones. So like if you're in Estado de Mexico, going to the Teotihuacan pyramids, definitely a stop that you should make. You could go to experiences on Airbnb, and they're really affordable tours there. I also did a horse riding tour in the outskirts of one of the cities that I went to. That one was the most expensive. But you know, these tours sometimes also include a meal, water, transportation, so it's a pretty good deal. There are some free tours at some places. You just have to know where the stop is. They're like these old-timey trains. What do you call that? I don't recall the name, but that one. And they will take you to like main attractions around the city, and you could do that for either free or like a really low price, like 10 pesos or something like that. It's pretty affordable. Tip number 6, food. Now this is the most, or one of the most fun categories out of all, because Mexico is like a whole experience when it comes to food. Like the UNESCO listed Mexican food as a cultural heritage of humanity. That's how great it is. And it's very affordable. If you decide to save as much money as possible, you could definitely do it for 20 bucks per day. Like for example, you can have fruit and yogurt and some bread in the morning, and then some like tostadas or some guisado with rice and beans. There's like so much variety, and then like some tacos at night. You could definitely do it for $20, and that could include a snack and water and even like tip for the restaurants or the stands. There's also a chain of places called Oxxo, and it's the same concept as 7-Eleven. Even like the quality of the food is the same as 7-Eleven actually. You find the same products that you would find at a 7-Eleven. They have hot foods, they have cold foods, they have snacks, they have things you can buy to prepare food at home, and it's very affordable. And they do take credit cards as well. You can have such a great experience without having to spend too much. And I would say if you can afford it, going to like high-end restaurants is a really interesting experience, because even like Michelin star level restaurants in Mexico are pretty affordable if you go with dollars. There was even a place where I spent $42, and that included so much food, like 2 entrees, dessert, alcohol, like, you know, wine and beer and like fancy water. What's it called? I don't know, it came in a fancy bottle, and it was $42 including tip, and I tipped well. So again, like depending on the city, you can find like a really nice high-end restaurant and spend $42 and eat so well. If you haven't, or if you're not able to in the States or wherever you live, then Mexico would be a great place to like have that experience. Now, when it comes to safety, the first thing I should say, do not drink the tap water. Do not drink the tap water. You will regret it. It's not for human consumption. You will need to purchase bottled water, but Airbnb accommodations, tours usually include water, or you could just refill a bottle. So like it's a good idea to get like a refillable bottle. I would also say be careful with like ice cream or like nieves or like that kind of stuff that's like from street carts, because you don't know what water was used to make that. Personally, I'm always really hesitant about buying those things, because I once got sick in DR from buying something called Frio Frio. Never again. I don't do it anywhere in the world. I just don't. Like if it's from the street, I don't think so. If it's from like an establishment, if it's like in a mercado, like one of those official mercados, a business in there, I would say, yeah, probably safer. Tip number 7, communication, internet, Wi-Fi, cell phone service. You definitely need cell phone service, internet while you're traveling Mexico. Like there are a lot of places where you're gonna need your GPS, where you're gonna need to like check in to play, like whatever the case, you need your phone. Now, unless you have a company that allows you to use their service in Mexico, then you will have to get a prepaid SIM card. It's pretty easy to do. I would recommend to do it before you go to Mexico. You can order it online. You could go to Amazon, there's Telcel. That one is a little bit more expensive. The range, it's $19 to $85 depending on, you know, which one you get. There's also Ultra Mobile, which is a little cheaper. You can find it on their website online. It's $15 to $30 depending on which card you get, and they have free shipping. If you wait to get to Mexico, you can still buy them there. You can get a SIM card at one of like the phone company stores, but then, you know, that's an extra expense because then you have to take either public transportation or a taxi there. It's like an extra thing that you have to do while you're on vacation. So I would recommend, you know, it's pretty easy to just get it online before you travel to Mexico. When it comes to Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi so that you can like save whatever amount of internet you have. Airbnbs, they always have Wi-Fi, and Ciudad de Mexico actually has free Wi-Fi available. Like there are many hotspots where you can get free Wi-Fi, which is pretty cool. Tip number 8, haggling. Some people might not know what haggling is. It's to barter or to negotiate a price. So barter. There are many places where it is appropriate to do so in Mexico. For example, at markets with some taxi drivers, unless it's like obviously like an Uber, especially because they will inflate prices if they know you're a tourist, and it's likely that they can tell if you're a tourist. So it's important to know when they're doing that. It happened to me many times with taxi drivers. They would put like an extra 20 pesos on top of like what I know the actual price was. Or at markets, you know, sometimes they will overcharge for trinkets. If they're like indigenous, like people selling stuff from their culture, like I really don't like to haggle, because at the end of the day, sometimes they're even underselling themselves, especially, you know, indigenous people. Like, so I would say, you know, it's up to you. Obviously I can't make you, but like I would really suggest don't haggle with indigenous people. Just, you know, especially if they're selling something that is like art, like a piece of like clothing or whatever it is, like just pay whatever they're asking you for. Usually they don't overinflate the price either. In my experience, if they didn't, because, you know, I ask questions. I always ask people like, how much is this usually? You know, like I'll ask a local like later or before, whatever. But, you know, that's why it's important to know the basic prices of things. Tip number 9, 8, which one? 9. Tip number 9, budget. Now for budget, I made a whole separate video explaining step by step, breaking it down, how to travel for 7 days in Mexico for a budget of $800 or $1,700. So watch that video to get all the details. It's just too much to put into like a few minutes in this video. And tip number 10 is what to wear in Mexico. And that's also a separate video because it's too long, it's too much. Basically, I can tell you, research the weather before you go to the different places. Mexico is, you know, also depends what time of the year you're going. Are you going when it's the dry season or the wet season? Usually it's a lot colder at night in most places in Mexico than it is during the day. So you will want to have layers, like a little denim jacket or, you know, something that you can put on, take off, depending on the situation. And they are modest dressers. So like, of course it depends where you go, the situation, but usually they're a little bit more modest. I mean, you can wear whatever you want, but if you want to be respectful, especially in certain places, if you go to churches, that kind of thing, take that into account. And that is all for the tips. I really hope this helped you plan your trip. If there are additional questions that you may have that I didn't answer in this very, very, very long 2-part video, then you can leave them below and I will answer to the best of my ability. Please subscribe if you benefited from the content, if you want more content like this. Leave a thumbs up, share with people who might be interested, and that is all for today. Thank you for listening if you're still here, and see you next time.